Fixing a broken life is not about comfort. It's not about self-love mantras, safe spaces, or waiting for the universe to heal you. If you really want to claw your way out of despair, history shows a far more brutal path. One carved by a teenage boy who watched his world burn and then turned himself into a legend. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, the man who would one day be called the greatest swordsman Japan had ever seen. But before he became a myth, he was a fugitive. At just 17, Musashi fought in the Battle of Sekigahara, the clash that decided the fate of Japan. He didn't walk away with glory. He walked away with nothing. His side was obliterated, his clan destroyed. Overnight, Musashi was a hunted dog in a fractured land, stripped of safety, identity, and family. And here's the truth most people ignore. That kind of trauma breaks nearly everyone. It drives men into self-destruction, into begging, into escape. But Musashi did the opposite. He embraced the darkness. He accepted that life is cruel, that despair is real, that the world owes you nothing. And then he weaponized it. The man who rose from this pit wasn't some wise old monk spouting gentle wisdom. He was a ruthless strategist, a man who starved his body, denied himself luxury, and lived like a wolf among sheep. He slept in caves, roamed the countryside as a masterless ronin, and sharpened his mind on philosophy and war. He understood something modern society refuses to admit. Survival after rock bottom requires brutality. Comfort will kill you. That's why Musashi's 5 rules are not cozy life lessons. They are harsh truths designed to strip weakness out of you. They demand that you stop chasing pleasure, stop drowning in emotions, stop obsessing over yourself, and cut jealousy out of your heart like a disease. They are controversial because they don't coddle you. They tell you the world is merciless, and if you want to rise again, you must be too. So the question is, when your life collapses, are you willing to play by Musashi's rules, or will you cling to illusions until despair consumes you? Rule 1. Accept life as it is. The first and most brutal rule Musashi lived by was deceptively simple. Accept life as it is. On the surface, it almost sounds like resignation, like telling someone to just roll over and accept defeat. But Musashi meant something far more dangerous, far more liberating. He knew that denial is poison. When your life collapses, the fastest way to dig your own grave is to keep pretending it hasn't. Picture this, 17 years old, barely a man, and already branded a loser by history. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 wasn't just a skirmish. It was the clash that decided the fate of Japan for centuries. Musashi chose the wrong side. His allies were crushed. His clan was wiped out. Overnight, he went from being a young warrior with a future to being a fugitive, carrying the stink of defeat everywhere he went. No home, no protection, no family, no future. That kind of loss has destroyed countless men. Some drowned in sake, some begged for mercy, others quietly disappeared into obscurity. Musashi could have easily been one of them. But here's where his philosophy began. Instead of resisting reality, he swallowed it whole. He didn't curse the heavens or cling to fantasies of what should have been. He didn't waste his energy replaying the past or building stories of revenge. He simply said, "This is my reality now. What's next?" And this is where Musashi becomes terrifying to modern ears. Because most of us live in denial. We resist what's happening around us, pretending we can hold on to what's already dead. We see it every day. People lose jobs and keep pretending they'll get back the same comfort. Couples watch relationships disintegrate, but cling to toxic fantasies instead of facing the truth. People numb themselves with entertainment, telling themselves tomorrow will magically be better. But denial doesn't heal. It keeps the wound open, bleeding you out one drop at a time. Musashi understood that the first strike against despair is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened. It doesn't mean approving of it. It means facing reality as it is, without sugarcoating or illusions. It means saying, yes, I lost. Yes, I am broken. Yes, my world has collapsed. And yet here I stand. That moment is terrifying because it strips away every excuse. But it's also the moment you regain control. Think about it. As long as you're fighting reality, you have no energy left to change it. You're trapped in an endless loop of why me. Every ounce of strength is wasted on resentment, bitterness, self-pity. Musashi realized that by accepting the battlefield was lost, he could finally focus on the next one. He stopped asking why me and started asking what now. That subtle shift is the beginning of every comeback story. And here's the dark truth. Musashi's life exposes without acceptance, you're dead already. If you deny that your marriage is gone, you'll never rebuild yourself. If you deny that your career is finished, you'll never pursue a new path. If you deny that your old world has collapsed, you'll spend the rest of your life living in ruins. Acceptance is painful because it burns away the illusion of safety, but it is also the only way to begin again. Musashi didn't rebuild by holding on to the dream of his clan returning. He accepted they were gone. He didn't wait for another lord to come save him. He accepted he was alone. From that brutal clarity, he started training harder, thinking deeper, preparing for the next phase of his life. His acceptance wasn't passive, it was active, almost aggressive. By embracing reality, without complaint, he freed himself from the chains of grief and self-pity. And isn't that what you need when your own life shatters? Imagine losing everything: your job, your partner, your health, your sense of meaning. The instinct is to resist, to scream, "This shouldn't be happening." But Musashi would call that a waste of breath. He'd say, "It is happening. Now move." Acceptance doesn't numb you, it empowers you. It's the difference between lying under rubble, begging for someone to save you, and pushing the rocks off your chest so you can crawl toward the light. As one account of Musashi's philosophy explains, life will have its struggles. You cannot change that fact, but you can change how you interpret them. That is the essence of this first rule. Stop kicking against the bricks of the wall that fell on you. Start looking for a way out from under the rubble. That shift of mindset is not just survival, it's transformation. Musashi's acceptance of defeat wasn't weakness, it was the seed of his comeback. Because only when you stop resisting the past can you start creating the future. And this rule still cuts deep today. When you accept your reality, no matter how brutal, you stop being a victim of it. You stop bleeding. You regain power. And in that moment, you are already stronger than most. But Musashi knew acceptance alone wasn't enough. Once you've swallowed reality, you face a new danger, the temptation to escape the pain. Because when your world is in ruins, nothing feels more seductive than running into the arms of distraction. Musashi called it chasing pleasure, and it was the next enemy he had to destroy. Rule 2. Do not chase pleasure to escape pain. If acceptance is the first step out of despair, the second step is resisting the trap that destroys more lives than failure ever could. Chasing pleasure to escape pain. Musashi warned against this centuries ago, and it's even more lethal today. Because the moment your world collapses, comfort comes calling, and comfort whispers in your ear like a poison lover. Forget your problems, numb the pain, sink into me. After Sekigahara, Musashi could have given up. He could have surrendered to despair, begged for mercy, or found shelter under the wing of some wealthy lord. That path was wide open, an easy life, warm meals, soft beds, and no battles. Many defeated samurai took that route. They drowned their failures in alcohol, feasts, and luxury. Musashi refused. Why? Because he knew pleasure wasn't salvation. It was a slow death. Musashi's rule was blunt. Do not pursue pleasure for its own sake. He saw that indulgence in fleeting comfort doesn't heal wounds, it deepens them. Chasing pleasure is like drinking salt water when you're dying of thirst. It numbs for a moment, but in the end, it only leaves you emptier, weaker, more desperate. Pleasure is a counterfeit cure, and yet look around our world today. Pleasure is sold as medicine. Heartbroken, drink, stressed, binge Netflix. Lonely, swipe right. Lost, buy something shiny you don't need. Every ad screams that comfort is the answer, that distraction is the cure. But it's a lie. A lie. Musashi saw clearly, even in his own time. He rejected luxury so violently that, according to legend, he even skipped baths, so he would never risk being unarmed or caught off guard. To him, discipline mattered more than comfort. Hardship was his forge. This is the part that makes Musashi dangerous to modern ears, because we've been trained to believe that self-care means softening every edge of life. But Musashi would laugh, or maybe spit, at that idea. He believed that pain faced directly, without anesthetic, could transform you. Running from it only ensured that it would grow. For Musashi, the road out of despair was not paved with comfort. It was carved by hardship. Imagine him wandering the countryside as a ronin. No home, no family, no lord, just discipline. He turned every day into a test. Train, fight, learn. Every discomfort hardened him, while his defeated peers wasted away in indulgence. He chose the road of fire because he knew it would burn away weakness. That's how he became unbreakable. Now ask yourself, when your own life shatters, what do you reach for? Do you drown yourself in alcohol, food, or distractions? Do you try to silence your pain with endless scrolling or empty entertainment? If you do, you're playing the same game Musashi refused to play. You're feeding your despair with illusions, and illusions never last. Musashi challenges us with this rule: endure discomfort now to avoid greater suffering later. It's the ultimate paradox. Comfort feels like relief in the moment, but over time, it's the straightest path to destruction. Discomfort feels unbearable now, but if you lean into it, it becomes fuel. The pain you face today is the weight that strengthens you tomorrow. Think about it. The breakup you don't escape with rebounds or substances is the pain that teaches you to rebuild yourself stronger. The financial collapse you don't cover with consumer distractions forces you to sharpen your skills and adapt. The grief you don't numb with endless entertainment becomes the fire that teaches you resilience. Musashi's second rule isn't about rejecting all joy. It's about rejecting the illusion that pleasure can fix what only discipline can heal. He put it in words so simple they sting. Pleasant things are only useful when they come naturally, not when you chase them like a hungry wolf. And that's the truth. Real pleasure, real joy, comes as a side effect of living with purpose, not as an escape from despair. So the next time you find yourself reaching for comfort, just to dull the pain, ask yourself, am I feeding my wounds, or am I healing them? Musashi's life proves that pleasure can blind you to the deeper work. He starved comfort out of his life to feed discipline. He chose fire over softness, and that's why he rose from nothing to legend. But there's a darker challenge hidden in this rule. Once you reject pleasure, once you stare pain directly in the face, you come up against something even more dangerous: your own emotions. Fear, rage, sadness, they hit you raw, without anesthetic. And if you don't learn how to master them, they'll destroy you faster than any enemy ever could. Musashi knew this too. That's why his third rule was as merciless as it was life-saving. Control your emotions and never act on impulse. Rule 3. Control your emotions. Don't act on impulse. When life collapses, it's not just the external world that falls apart. It's the storm inside your own chest. Fear, rage, grief, desperation. They rush in like floodwaters, and before you know it, you're drowning. Most people let those emotions steer their decisions. They lash out, quit too soon, burn bridges, or spiral into self-destruction. But Musashi's third rule is merciless in its clarity. Do not trust your emotions, and never act on impulse. To modern ears, that sounds almost offensive. We're told every day to follow your heart, or trust your feelings. Musashi spat in the face of that advice. He believed acting on emotion was not just unwise, it was outright wrong. Because emotions are unstable. They rise like fire, burn hot, and vanish. They cloud judgment, warp perspective, and push you into decisions you'll regret once the storm passes. Musashi knew this truth, not from books, but from blood. Take his most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, a warrior so skilled he was nicknamed the Demon of the West. By every measure, Kojiro was a worthy opponent, fast, strong, and lethal. On the day of their duel, Musashi arrived hours late. Why? Strategy. He knew delay would enrage Kojiro, throwing him into emotional chaos. By the time Musashi stepped onto the beach, Kojiro's fury was boiling over. He was trembling, red with anger, desperate to end Musashi quickly. And in that blind rage, he made mistakes. Musashi, calm and calculating, exploited them. With a single decisive strike, he killed Kojiro. Think about that. The man who lost control of his emotions lost his life. The man who mastered his emotions mastered the fight. Now, you might not be battling with swords on a remote beach, but the principle applies everywhere. How many times have people ruined relationships by screaming things they didn't mean? How many careers have been destroyed because someone quit in anger or made a rash decision in despair? How many lives are wrecked by people who mistake temporary feelings for permanent truths? At rock bottom, emotions run wild. One moment you're furious at the world, the next you're drowning in sadness. You want to run, hide, scream, or even hurt yourself just to feel something different. Musashi would look at you and say, pause, do nothing until reason returns. Because when you act in chaos, you only dig the hole deeper. This doesn't mean Musashi denied emotion. He felt fear, he felt anger, he felt grief, but he refused to be ruled by them. He used them as signals, not commands. Fear told him to prepare. Anger reminded him of what was at stake. Sadness showed him what he valued, but none of them got to make his decisions. He always let reason hold the sword, and that's the challenge for anyone rebuilding their life. You cannot control the waves of emotion that crash into you, but you can control whether you let them steer your ship. Step back, breathe, ask yourself, am I about to do this because it's wise, or because I'm hurting right now? If the answer is pain, wait. Give it a day, give it a week. Cool heads create strong strategies. Musashi once wrote that certain actions require 100% clarity of condition. In other words, if you're uncertain, if you're clouded by feeling, you should stop. Think, reassess. That patience is not weakness. It's survival. Acting in rage might feel powerful, but it's almost always self-sabotage. Acting in despair might feel honest, but it often shuts doors you'll need later. Emotional impulse is a saboteur disguised as a friend. And here's where Musashi's teaching gets both dark and liberating. Controlling your emotions is not about suppression. It's not about pretending you don't feel what you feel. It's about refusing to kneel to those feelings. Emotions are guests. They come, they stay, they leave. You acknowledge them, learn from them, but you do not hand them the keys to your future. So the next time anger tells you to lash out at someone you love, next time despair urges you to quit, pause. The next time fear whispers that you should hide from opportunity, pause. Musashi would remind you that the enemy is not always out there. Sometimes the deadliest opponent is your own ungoverned heart. And here's the paradox. Once you stop letting emotions drive you, you don't become cold or robotic. You actually gain freedom. Because when you are calm in chaos, you see clearly. You can choose wisely. You can move with purpose while others thrash blindly. That is real power. Musashi's duel with Kojiro wasn't just about swords. It was a blueprint for life. Rage blinds, calm wins, impulse kills, strategy survives. But even Musashi knew there was another danger lurking after emotional control. Once you've accepted reality and denied yourself the escape of pleasure, once you've quieted the storm of feelings inside you, there's a subtler trap, a poison that seeps in not from outside, but from within. Self-obsession. Because nothing at rock bottom feels more natural than turning your gaze inward, drowning in your own pain. And Musashi's next rule was designed to shatter that prison. Rule 4. Don't obsess over yourself. Gain perspective. By the time Musashi had survived his defeats, resisted the lure of comfort, and mastered his emotions, he faced a new danger. It wasn't an enemy with a sword or a clan hunting him down. It was something far quieter, far more poisonous. Self-obsession. Because when your life shatters, nothing feels more natural than curling inward, replaying your pain on an endless loop, convincing yourself that your suffering is the center of the universe. And yet Musashi's fourth rule cuts through this poison with surgical clarity. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. At first glance, this might sound like humility for humility's sake, but Musashi wasn't teaching politeness. He was teaching survival. He knew that when you fixate on yourself, your failures feel infinite, your pain feels unbearable, and your future feels closed. Self-obsession magnifies wounds until they're all you can see. It blinds you to solutions, to opportunities, to the bigger reality waiting outside your personal storm. Musashi's own life was proof of this. After countless duels, after victories that should have made his ego balloon to the size of Mount Fuji, he refused to drown in his own reflection. Instead, he studied philosophy, calligraphy, and painting. He immersed himself in strategy, not just as a fighter, but as a thinker. Later in life, he retreated into a cave, where he wrote the Book of Five Rings, one of the greatest works on strategy ever written. Alone in that cave, Musashi didn't spend his days saying, "Look how great I am," or "Look how broken I was." He widened his lens. He meditated on patterns, on the rhythm of life and war, on principles that went beyond his own victories and losses. And here's the lesson. When you zoom out, the unbearable becomes bearable. Your suffering becomes smaller in the vastness of the world. That breakup you thought ended your future. It's one story in a world of billions. That job loss that shattered your confidence. A small storm in a lifetime of changing weather. When you fixate only on yourself, your failures feel final. But when you think deeply of the world, you realize life goes on, and so can you. This is not about dismissing your pain. Musashi never said your struggles don't matter. He simply understood they are not the only thing that matters. By shifting focus outward, you lighten the weight crushing you. You begin to see paths forward that were invisible when you were staring at your own wounds. Modern psychology echoes this truth. Self-obsession is linked with anxiety, depression, and despair. The more you ruminate, the darker the hole gets. But service, learning, curiosity, turning your gaze outward, these are proven to heal. Musashi knew this centuries before studies confirmed it. He understood that perspective is medicine. Think about it. When you're at rock bottom, your instinct is to say, "Why me? Why is my life so cursed?" But what happens if you shift the question? Instead of asking "Why me?" ask "What can I learn from this that might help others? What can I see in the world beyond my pain?" That shift turns suffering into strength. It turns despair into wisdom. Musashi's rule isn't soft. It's brutal in its demand. He is telling you, You are not the center of the universe. Stop acting like you are. That's hard to swallow when your life feels like it's in flames, but it's exactly what saves you. The more lightly you think of yourself, the harder it is for ego and despair to trap you. The deeper you think of the world, the more resilient you become. Like bamboo bending in the wind, you stop snapping under pressure. So how do you apply this in practice? Step outside your own head. Study something new. Serve someone else. Look at the world's beauty, its struggles, its endless complexity. Realize you are a part of something vast. Your pain is real, but it is not infinite. The world is larger than your despair, and when you connect to that, you find strength you didn't know you had. Musashi proved it, in that lonely cave, stripped of everything but his mind and his sword. He discovered truths that outlived him by centuries. He didn't become a legend by obsessing over himself. He became a legend by seeing the bigger picture, by seeking principles beyond his own ego. And that's the challenge he throws to you. Stop staring at your own wounds until they consume you. Look outward, expand, connect, because here's the dark truth. Self-obsession at rock bottom is a trap as deadly as any sword. But perspective is the key that unlocks the door. And once you step through that door, you discover something else waiting. Another poison, subtler still, that can undo everything if you let it. It creeps in the moment. You look at others, not to learn, but to compare. It's jealousy. And Musashi's final rule was crafted to crush it before it crushes you. Rule 5. Never let jealousy poison. You see, there is one final poison that seeps into the soul when life is broken. Jealousy. At rock bottom, it's easy to look around and feel like the entire world is moving forward while you're stuck in the ashes. Friends with careers, neighbors with happy families, strangers with smiles plastered across social media feeds. Every image feels like a blade twisting in your gut, whispering, "Why them and not me?" Musashi's final rule is blunt, almost cruel in its simplicity. Never be jealous. To Musashi, jealousy wasn't just a moral failing, it was a tactical weakness, a cancer that rotted a warrior from the inside out. Jealousy wastes energy on what you cannot control. It blinds you to your own path. It eats away at your spirit while the person you envy continues on, untouched. In other words, jealousy destroys the jealous, not the envied. Think about Musashi's own journey. After Sekigahara, wandering as a masterless ronin, he must have encountered countless men who seemed more fortunate. Wealthy lords with servants, samurai with titles and estates, merchants with gold. Musashi had none of it. He slept rough, ate little, carried nothing but his sword and his will. He could have cursed his fate, resented those who had more, and drowned in bitterness. But he didn't. Why? Because envy was a distraction he could not afford. Every second spent coveting another man's life was a second stolen from building his own. Instead of jealousy, Musashi focused ruthlessly on self-improvement. He trained until his body became a weapon. He studied until his mind became a fortress. He practiced until his art, his philosophy, and his strategy eclipsed everyone around him. He became untouchable, not by resenting others, but by refusing to waste his life comparing. Now look at our world today. Jealousy is everywhere, amplified by the glowing screens in our pockets. People scroll endlessly, measuring their worst moments against someone else's highlight reel. They poison themselves with envy over vacations, bodies, cars, careers, relationships. And what does it bring? Nothing but misery. While you see the in jealousy, your own life rots from neglect. You stop planting your own seeds because you're too busy staring at someone else's harvest. Musashi's wisdom strikes like a blade here. Gratitude is the antidote. The man who refuses to be jealous is free. Gratitude breaks the chains. Envy wraps around your heart. It shifts the focus from what you lack to what you still have, no matter how small. and from that gratitude grows strength. Maybe you don't have wealth, but you have health. Maybe you don't have status, but you have freedom. Maybe you don't have everything, but you still have enough to fight, to rebuild, to rise. It's not about ignoring ambition. Musashi was ambitious, but his ambition was pure, directed at sharpening himself, not coveting what others held. He saw other people's success as proof of possibility, not as proof of his inadequacy. That shift changes everything. Instead of jealousy crippling you, it fuels you. You think, if they can climb, so can I. If they can succeed, so can I. Envy drains, but inspiration drives. And here's the darker truth. Musashi knew jealousy is a poison. Most men never survive. It festers quietly, turning them bitter, turning them small. They spend their lives resenting instead of creating, hating instead of building, scrolling instead of striving. That's why his final rule is ruthless. Cut jealousy out before it kills you. Don't let it take root, because if it does, it will consume every ounce of strength you need to rebuild. So ask yourself, when you see someone else thriving while you struggle, do you let envy eat you alive? Or do you let it ignite you, remind you of what's possible, and push you forward? Musashi's answer is clear. Let jealousy go. Focus on your own blade, your own path, your own war. Gratitude for what you still have, and what you can still become, is the soil where your comeback will grow. And when you put all 5 rules together, acceptance of reality, rejection of empty pleasures, mastery of emotion, perspective beyond yourself, and freedom from envy, something powerful happens. The broken pieces of life stop being rubble. They become building blocks. One by one, you stack them into something unshakable. You don't just survive despair, you transform it into strength. That is Musashi's final gift. But here's the haunting part. These rules are not gentle. They're not easy. They demand ruthlessness with yourself, honesty with your failures, and discipline with your future. Most people won't follow them. Most will choose comfort, denial, envy. That's why most people stay broken. The question is, will you? Conclusion. Building the unbreakable. When you put all 5 of Musashi's rules together, something remarkable happens. What once looked like a broken life, nothing but ruins and ashes, begins to take on a new shape. The pieces don't vanish. They don't magically disappear like pain never existed. Instead, they transform. They become building blocks. Each rule is like a stone, and stacked together, they form the foundation of something unshakable. Think about the journey. It begins with acceptance, the hardest and yet most liberating step. Musashi shows us that facing the truth, however brutal, is the only way forward. You can't rebuild if you're still clinging to the corpse of your old life. The moment you accept, you stop bleeding. The wound closes, pain remains, but it's no longer festering. Then comes discipline in the face of pleasure. Here is where most fall. The world tempts you with 1,000 easy escapes. Food, drink, scrolling, shallow comfort. They all promise relief, and they all deliver nothing. Musashi's refusal to indulge was not asceticism for its own sake. It was strategy. He understood that pleasure is a leash, and anyone who lives for it is not free. By rejecting comfort, he gained power. By rejecting distraction, he gained focus. And that is how he carved himself into a weapon. From there, Musashi turns to the inner war of emotions. Rage, fear, despair. They are louder than any battlefield. Most people let those feelings drive their lives, mistaking chaos for truth. Musashi flipped the script. He did not suppress what he felt, but neither did he obey it. His duel with Sasaki Kojiro was not just the clash of 2 swordsmen. It was proof that a calm mind defeats a burning heart. In life as in combat, impulse is suicide, strategy survives. But survival is not just about endurance, it's also about perspective. That's why Musashi's fourth rule, think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world, cuts deeper than most realize. Self-obsession is a cage. When you're at rock bottom, it's easy to believe you're the center of suffering, that no one else can understand, that your pain is singular. But zoom out. Look at history. Look at the world. Everyone suffers. Everyone loses. Everyone fails. And yet life continues. This isn't meant to belittle your pain. It's meant to free you from its chokehold. By shifting focus outward, you reconnect to the vastness of existence. Your failures shrink, your perspective widens, and suddenly, paths forward appear. Finally, Musashi hands us the last blade. Cut out jealousy. The deadliest poison doesn't come from defeat. It comes from comparison. While you envy someone else's life, you abandon your own. While you resent what they have, you neglect what you could build. Musashi refused to waste even a moment of his energy staring at another man's fortune. He poured everything into sharpening his own. And because of that, his name endures while the men he passed along the way are forgotten. Gratitude is the antidote. Gratitude transforms envy into fuel. Gratitude frees you to fight your battles without distraction. Together, these 5 rules are not gentle advice. They are not soft encouragements you'll find in a self-help bestseller. They are brutal, demanding, relentless. Acceptance, discipline, control, perspective, gratitude. Each one strips away weakness. Each one forces you to confront truths you'd rather avoid. And that's exactly why they work. Because let's be honest, most people don't climb out of despair. They sink into it. They live their lives in quiet bitterness, chained to denial, to comfort, to envy. They never rebuild. They never transform. They settle, and then they die, forgotten. Musashi's life proves there is another way. He lost everything: family, clan, honor, and yet he became immortal through his philosophy, his discipline, his art, and his victories. He turned despair into strategy. He turned loneliness into wisdom. He turned pain into power. His rules are not relics of feudal Japan. They are a manual for anyone who has hit rock bottom and refuses to stay there. So now the question isn't whether Musashi's rules work. History has already answered that. The question is whether you will use them. When your world collapses, will you accept reality or fight ghosts? Will you chase comfort or embrace the forge of hardship? Will you bow to emotion or wield reason? Will you obsess over yourself or open your eyes to the wider world? Will you rot in envy or rise with gratitude? The blueprint is here. The path is clear, but the walk is brutal. Few will take it. Most will look away, hoping for an easier road. But for those who do take it, for those who embrace Musashi's 5 rules not as philosophy, but as action, there is something waiting on the other side of despair. A life no longer fragile, but unbreakable.